So this is going to be fun. Welcome, Bill, to our Leaders Who Care series. I think you'll probably be able to show people why you really deserve to be on a Leaders Who Care series. So I don't want not too much pressure, but I think you'll be able to show that. So welcome.
Hey, how you doing, Mark? I'm already feeling pressured on why I care and what I do. So I guess the spotlight is on me. So how are you? How is everything going in your world?
It's going good. You know, the world's still turning round and round and round and round, and there are, I believe, way more leaders who care than people who don't, and that's what we're trying to do here is recognize that. So, great play to start, Bill, would be if you could share who you are. We'll get to the business in a minute, but who's Bill? Or what's that show? Where in the world is Bill? So who's Bill?
With Waldo.
Or Matt Lowry? Remember that? Where in the world? Like, where are you from originally? Where you are now? Family? Maybe your favorite color? Maybe something you've never told anybody ever, and you want to reveal it now? Stuff like that, and then we'll get into the business stuff. How does that sound?
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad it's not going to be interrogation. So yes, I am Bill Schiffmiller. I'm from New York City, born and raised out on Long Island, the suburb of New York City. So I'm a diehard native New Yorker. I'm also a lifelong hearing aid user. I have a profound hearing loss, so it's a big part of who I am. And I am married for over 30 years to my wife from the Philippines, and she is my rock star. And I have been bi-coastal in between New York and Seattle for the last 6 years. And so I'm happy to be back in New York full bound. And so I love the New York environment with all the wheeling and dealing. And while I will miss Seattle with all of the, creativity and curiosity that goes around, but I'll make sure I go back every quarter just to touch base with those folks to make sure I get my creative juices flowing. And so I love New York because of everything it has to offer. And even though I was born and raised here, I still have not seen everything in this town. So that keeps me on my feet.
Are you running for mayor or what? Geez.
In Seattle, I'm a member of what's called the collective, and because of my the idea that I'm always talking to people, they call me the mayor of the collective. So it's also aligned with the work that I do, and I am the founder of Akoyo, and Akoyo is a sound wellness company.
Well, hang on, time out. We'll get to that in a minute.
I apologize. So.
Like, if you want to have your own show, you can do that. But let's just.
No, that's cool.
No, but what about kids? You have kids?
I have no kids, but I do have 13 nieces and nephews from around the world. So that we get to be the cool uncle and aunt. So we don't have the woes of a parent. You were asking what I love, anything cultural in this town, good food, the arts. We're always excited to see what's new and out there. And we're always, just saw an amazing event at Museum of Modern Art here in New York. And it was about the use of AI. And you should see this, Mark. They took every piece that's owned by the museum and incorporated into AI as a single piece. Think about what that could mean.
Yeah, that's it. We thought the last 50 years was unbelievable. Wait for the next 20 years. It's going to be
or even the next 2 years, 5 years.
Or even 2 years. So let's go back to those nieces and nephews for a minute. What were you like as a kid or a teenager? Did you read a lot? Did you watch a lot of movies? Did you play sports, music? What was Bill like?
Well, as my wife would say, I must have been a goofy kid. So I love anything visual. So for me, it was photography. I was reading Life magazine. I was checking out Better Homes and Garden publications. I loved the photos that were in those magazines, and I would, go through stacks of them each week, each month, whenever the magazine would come out. A lot of photo books. I found that I was discovering the world through photography. And one of the things that always stuck with me was the Family of Man book. This was a photo series that came out of Museum of Modern Art. You could see I'm going back to MoMA. That was curated by Edward Steichen, who was a well-known photographer at the time. And what he did was he collected photographs from around the world, people of all classes, different status, rich, poor, happy, sad, deaf. You got to see all the emotions, all parts of life through photographs. And they were mainly black and white photographs. It was powerful, and it stuck with me ever since. And it got me exposure to, oh, I didn't know there was a place called Singapore, or a place called Nepal, or Liechtenstein, and all these little places. And I got to learn history through photos. So I was always checking out those books. And, I was also exposed to the art. My parents took me to the gallery, to the museum. One thing that I always loved was a dance company called Alvin Ailey. And Alvin Ailey himself was a dancer. He was a black man from the South. And the way he expressed himself through his own experience with civil rights and discrimination, he was able to express it through his dance, through his choreography. And also my embrace of Mother Nature. I love Mother Nature. I was a former backpacker and climber, so I took the risk of going to those places and embracing the beauty of Mother Nature, as well as how dangerous she can be, how fiery she can be. And so I really enjoyed all that. And also, here's a little fun fact. I used to be a mime. I did pantomime through my junior high and high school years. I actually wanted to be a professional mime. And I came this close to going to Paris to study with Marcel Marceau.
Damn, that's where the whole came from before.
That's right. That's where all the drama and everything that comes into play.
Wow.
And here's a fun fact about Marcel Marceau.
Yeah.
So there was a movie called Silent Film by Mel Brooks. There was one thing that was said out loud, and at the end of the movie, it said "the end." It was Marcel Marceau who said "the end."
That's hilarious. Well, I did not know that. So you see, learn something every day. So I gather then, from what you just told me, that was the impetus that intrigued you to get your BFA in photographic illustration at Rochester, right?
Absolutely. I knew that I wanted to be a photojournalist or a fashion photographer. I was in awe with, Eugene Smith, who covered a lot on World War II and post-war. And I got a lot of exposure to understanding what a photojournalist was all about. And then with Richard Avedon, it was about embracing the beauty of fashion and what you can do with lighting. And I knew by going to RIT, that was the mecca for photography. And also because it's in Rochester, New York, that was also the home place for George Eastman and Kodak. So I felt that photography was at the center of the world there in Rochester, and specifically at RIT. And so I knew that entering the program, I was going to be a rock star in photography. Before I knew it, I discovered other strengths, and that's when I realized I'm a better photo editor than I am a photographer. And so I that's where my career got started, is going into magazine publishing, and RIT had a lot to do with that.
So if you stick on education, then later on you went to into design management at Pratt Institute. Was that because of what you were just talking about?
So throughout my career, before getting my master's, as art director of publication as well as photo editor, I realized that I had a knack for design and business. Where could I go for that? At the time, you had MBA programs that did not focus on design. There were these, niche areas of finance and strategic planning and international business, but I couldn't find that right program. And at the time, when I was looking, there was the University of Helsinki, and they had the first that I discovered was design and business program, but it wasn't close to home. And that's when I discovered Pratt Institute, and they have their design management program. And it was a fantastic executive program, 18 months long, where you got to learn how design can be strategic to business. And that was a perfect program because it married my knack for business and for design.
That makes sense. That's why I always wanted to work for a hockey team when I was younger, because I wanted to combine my love of hockey and the business stuff too. And I did get offered my dream job, but I actually was told to turn it down for how I came to the States. But that's my story. We'll get to that another time. So let me move towards a little bit towards business. But before that, like so many challenges facing persons and disadvantages and judgment that goes with it. Hearing has always been looked upon in a weird way, or even ignored sometimes. And in terms of, you're less intelligent, or you're weak, or you have, there's mental and physical problems, or self-esteem, vanity, embarrassment. There's so many things you can think of. And I have hearing aids too. So, and I went through that, even getting that, my vanity of wearing them type of deal. But it's come a long way, not all the way, that it should, but to understand that it's worse not to address it than, and allowing people, as I think I saw you somewhere where you said to access the wonders of hearing, basically, and then also prevent major problems. And I remember when I got mine, I think the thing that really got me was they started talking about you can get dementia faster. So not to make a speech, but with all that, when did you discover your hearing challenge? How did you see yourself, and it affected you in life generally?
Yeah, so I was born with a hearing loss, and so it was not discovered until I was 6 years old. So that's when I got my first hearing aid. Because I was born with this condition, that was my world. So I had the gift for lip reading. So I was able to fool folks and get through my communication as a kid. However, my folks knew something was going on. Whenever I would run after a ball on the street and the car horns were blasting, I would not respond. So they knew something was happening. Now, mind you, this is the 1960s, so physicians did not have all of the knowledge that we have today, and they were not necessarily so empathetic. But they said that I had mental retardation, that I should go into a mental institution. So my folks knew that wasn't the case. It was when I was in first grade that a Mrs. Jenko, she looked like she was 100 years old, white hair. She obviously had been teaching for a long time. She knew something was happening with me. And so what she did was she came behind me without me looking, clapped her hand. I didn't respond. That's when she said, Billy had a hearing loss. And then immediately hearing test, and I was fitted with the hearing aid, and that was when my hearing world started. And so my command for language came later. And that's when I underwent speech therapy for many years. And that's where me, Bill, started to shape, take form. And that's when I realized, how am I different? Why am I faced with these challenges? Yet how am I similar with others? So that started the journey in what I've become.
It's interesting. Did you, going back to the kid thing for a minute, when you were looking and you said, you told me you like glasses because it helps you see. did did you, I wonder, as a kid, when you were looking at all those pictures, if that was even more pronounced? I don't even know, because of that, and you not even knowing.
So, well, about my lack of hearing, was it that pronounced? Well, first of all, physically, you mentioned the glasses. So I had black glasses with built-in hearing aids. And these hearing aids had tubes and noticeable ear mold. And the glass part, the eyeglass part, came in three colors: black, black, and black. So you didn't really have any voice or any form of independence. So some of the kids were very clever by calling me four eyes and four ears. So that's where I was like, okay, I mean, you know, and there was a lot of name calling and bullying and all that. And that's when I realized, instead of fighting it, embrace it. How do you take it to your advantage? And there will be situations where a mother would catch the little kid staring at my hearing aid, and I go, "It's cool, it's fine. I'm getting the baseball game on these devices." And so it was another way for people to see, oh, okay, that's cool. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So what I've learned is people have a lot of trepidation when it comes to addressing folks, not just with hearing, but with other physical and cognitive challenges. And quite simply, they just don't know. There's ignorance involved. And once you get them to see you and what you're all about and what you're capable of, that's where you start to feel better. You start to have self-esteem and confidence and get to do what you want to do. Um, I do recall that because of the hearing, I had to undergo speech therapy. And there came a point when I was in high school, enough was enough. I did not start showing up for my speech therapy session. And the principal and the head of the speech program with the speech pathologist called for a meeting with my mother. And I'm like, I think I was 15 years old. And I'm going, what is this? Well, Billy needs to continue with his speech therapy. He's having trouble with his S's and D's. And I was like, that's it. I'm not doing this anymore. Enough is enough. And my mom said, you heard the guy. And that was the end. That's where I found my voice. That's where I said, this is it. That's where I started to be confident in who I am despite the challenges.
Yeah, it's fascinating over the last decades. Thank God how much it's changed, because you're right. There's so much ignorance, and they even put people into homes for things you'd never think of putting people into homes now, and institutions and stuff. How many people were hurt from that way back, and how much did we miss contributions of people that had different challenges but were not allowed to engage them. And do you remember the movie, speaking of teachers, and Mr. Holland's Opus?
Mm-hmm.
You seen that? I think his
He
son.
was ashamed of his own deaf child. And yes, he had this love for music.
Yep.
And if he wished he could share that passion as he did with his students, why can't he do that with his son? And he didn't know how, because he wouldn't open himself to his son's world.
Yeah, it was an amazing movie. Told so much story, and everything. It was great. We can talk about that for hours and hours. Let me a little bit here. We founded our firm, Fifth Element, on the basis that leaders and businesses can do way better when they're doing good. There's no doubt in our mind that can happen. Share with us how you discovered and made your purpose to be focused on accessibility and being a hearing advocate, and then founding your company to provide
Absolutely.
those soundscape solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. My father had polio as a kid. He was not expected to live when he was 3 years old. And one of the things that they did back then is they did an experimental surgery by removing his stomach muscle and putting it into the destroyed calf muscle. Well, it was a disaster. As a result, my father was left with a limb. And I'm sorry, limp, excuse me. Because of the way he walked, I picked it up because he was my role model. And so I learned as I got older how my father managed and how he became a successful businessman. And so I took that along with how I was addressing my own healing, and I became a keen observer of things around me. I found I wanted to help people, and I became empathetic. And by being empathetic, you get to be open to what's going on in that person's world. How can you put yourself in their shoes and to get a better understanding? Because we know what it's like to be marginalized, as my father was faced. And by the way, my father was like, let me tell you about these different terms that are used. You're saying accessibility. Let me tell you about a time when it was called being crippled. So you can see how much we've changed since then. We're getting better at it. So when I started on my journey upon graduating from Pratt, I knew I wanted to build a better mousetrap to changing hearing aid batteries. So that was dealing with dexterity and vision issues. And this is what we ended up building. We built a better mousetrap to change hearing aid batteries. I knew that I was onto something in dealing with creating products in and around universal access, which became accessibility. With the term accessibility, it meant assessing abilities, as opposed to disability. If you look at the word dis in disability, it means you're broken. I'm not broken, I'm just built differently. So that is where, okay, let's see how Apple is talking about accessibility. And I joined Apple, and I was on the retail front. And here was the thing. No one was aware of or knew how to use the accessibility features into the product, particularly the Mac at the time. It's there where through grassroots effort, and I created this role that I led accessibility initiative for Apple, understanding what it meant for users of these great features. May you have vision, hearing, dexterity, and cognitive challenges. How can you approach those folks as well as people on staff who have these challenges? So how do we talk about it? How do we continue to be ambassadors of the Apple brand and yet embrace accessibility? And so that's where I got to learn what are the business challenges, what are the team challenges and the other stakeholders, and how do we incorporate accessibility thinking into everything that we do? And so what was wonderful about the time at Apple was I would report back to corporate on the realm of accessibility, because retail was the front line, and saying, hey, you guys do so well in your respective areas. Let me make you aware of what accessibility is and what's happening and what can we do to make things better.
That's brilliant. It always makes you think there's a reason for everything. Things were meant to be for a reason, so a person can make, a major contribution that might not have ever happened, otherwise. What does hearing wellness management entail? Like, how do you make daily maintenance, like you say, a rewarding experience rather than a frustrating?
Yeah, so let me just give you a little background on Accordio. So upon the creation of the battery dispenser, we got to learn about hearing loss, the realm of addressing hearing loss. You talked about the challenges of trying to get a hearing aid and any stigmas associated with it. Because there's a lot of attitude towards hearing aid, thinking it's like grandma and grandpa with a hearing aid, and they're forgetful. That is challenging. And despite all of the amazing products that are out there, like these cool glasses, they're funky, cool clothes that you could wear that make things accessible for those with challenging limb situations. But when it comes to hearing, too expensive. They're expecting that it's going to restore their hearing. So as we looked into that and look at the attitude and also look at the business model of delivering hearing aid solution, we decided, let's pivot. Because even I, with a profound hearing loss, was faced with noise challenges. So while I need hearing aids for communication, I also needed to find a way to manage my noise and sound. And just so you were, hearing is the communication piece. But what about all of the exposure to sound and noise? And so we pivoted. So we went from dealing with hearing health, and we had guides on how you can address your hearing loss. But we also started to look at soundscape. What is your personal soundscape like? How does noise and sound affect you? And what kind of solution can we find for you? And what we've done is, as we started with hearing loss, we created the dialogue. Let's start a conversation on your world. What's going on? I'm feeling stressed. Okay, well, why are you feeling stressed? Well, I have so much to deliver at work. Well, where do you work? I work out of my home. So you work out of your home. Do you have children? Yeah, I do. And man, they drive me crazy. They're so noisy. They're always, I can't focus on my work. So already you're starting to see the picture of that individual's world. And this can be applied at work as well as in social settings. So that's where our focus is, to help you identify the environment you're in and the issues that you may be having. And are you having trouble sleeping? Dimension, focusing. And there are all kinds of solutions out there that you may not be aware of that we can bring to your attention. Bringing up the ear. I have found that whenever we talk to folks about what we're doing, they go, that's interesting. Oh, by the way, I have ringing of the ear. What can I do about that? So suddenly they're like, wow, I could talk to somebody about this. And that's what we're doing. We're creating an omni-channel platform to address your soundscape so you could start to sound and feel better. And so what that omni-channel consists of is in-store, online, as well as through app. And so through app and online approaches, that's where you can manage your soundscape. And the way you can do that is document what's going on in your world. You start to see a pattern. Maybe there's a noisy road that I take to go food shopping. Perhaps you take a different route that you can take so it's not so stressful.
I think it's brilliant. So many things you said there, but I think it's brilliant in the sense that you're talking about overall well-being, not just hearing better, if you will. You're talking about stress. And then stress affects other stuff. You're talking about how does it impact your engagement with your family, with your friends. You're talking about if you're at a business meeting and there's noise and maybe you misinterpret something somebody says, for example, and it turns out a different way. I mean, it's just like real life stuff that you're talking about.
Yeah, and you mentioned about dementia. It has been reported, and there's plenty of research out there now that has linked the lack of addressing your hearing to dementia. Why? You're socially withdrawn. And when you're socially withdrawn, you're not being engaged, you're not being challenged. And so if you could be fitted, it doesn't have to be a hearing aid. Maybe you need noise reduction earbuds. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on an audiologist. providing what your hearing condition is, but if appropriate, you could get these lesser expensive solutions.
Yeah, and I think we're at a time right now, and I think you're in the perfect time where it's probably is at the lowest level it's ever been for judgment of having a hearing aid. There's still judgment, I think, out there and vanity and all that, but certainly not like it was before. And so the opportunity of more positive impact happening, with your kids, with your family, with just in the community. And because you're right, when you do withdraw, and you do withdraw, if it's hard to engage, then it makes total sense that you're going to either get dementia or just mentally depressed or something. I'm not sure.
And it's like, why is grandpa a grouchy old man? Well, maybe he simply can't hear. So,
Yeah.
it instead of asking the kids to please be quiet and, they can't help themselves, perhaps you can take control.
Well, empathy was a good word you used before, because everybody's got something going on. And maybe if we take a breath and count to 10 and say, so how's it going? For real, not just how are you? Fine. I'm fine too. Great. Like type of thing. That does.
Absolutely.
The fourth industrial revolution has been said to be about technology, AI, VR, all that stuff. And the fifth industrial revolution is hopefully supposed to be about humanity. And that's partly where we get our fifth element name. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons, anyways, the fifth industrial revolution. And with hearing tech advancing so significantly, and prices going way down, and so on and so forth, and more acceptance and understanding, can you share a little bit more about the impact it has on lives of all ages, and how it I still go back to when you were looking at the magazines and seeing the world out there and whatnot, how it, someone now would potentially say, I gotta go check that out, I gotta go, versus maybe not going because they know there's something wrong, or they feel not, they don't feel right because they're at a disadvantage. Just share with us a little bit more about the impact what you're doing will make to people's lives.
So with the work we're doing with the Koyo, it's multi-generational. You're starting the journey. You're coming in today as a member to address whatever sound need you have at that given point in time in your life. As you continue the journey with us, your needs change. We will have solutions for you as your needs change. For example, you have a young family with a child, small child. What can I do to protect my child's hearing? Well, there are great protective wear that's out there that's fun and funky and does cut down on certain decibel levels. Once you see an example of a child doing something because their parents became aware and got some information from us that was uh, impactful, they're going to go, okay, I see what you've done for my child. What can you do for me? By the way, as a parent, I'm very active. I'm always on call all day long, and I'm wearing headphones. The headphones are not working properly. So you get to see that you're going to see the different needs you have in your work environment. And then, my parents are struggling with hearing. Well, perhaps they may use what the FDA releases over-the-counter hearing aids. Perhaps there are some affordable hearing solutions for them. And if you find that I am in my apartment or in my house, I have a certain need to reduce noise, maybe there's acoustic attenuation material. So you'll see over time your needs change. Now, what I painted for you with a family, but imagine that individual over time, it will change and needs to be addressed. So with the technology and the amazing services and products that are out there, what we've done is take the confusion out of your soundscape and come up with curated products that we can recommend for you. Not by type of product, but the type of needs that you have. Focus, sleep, what have you.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. So in Nina's, right? You're
Nina's, yes.
right. So when she yells at you, do you pretend that you can't hear her?
Well, you have to get a marriage counselor involved. That's called selective hearing. Um, I that's the thing. My wife and I are partners, so it's like be sensitive, be considerate of where you're calling. So calling from another room, she knows that's difficult for me, and so she would try to make herself present. Now, of course, you're in the spur of the moment. Spur of the moment, you're dealing with a situation, and she's gonna blurt out loud. But she and I are partners in addressing my need when we go into a restaurant. She knows that my left side is better than the other, or where we're situated in a restaurant, in a corner, or whatever the material is on the floor and the wall and all that. She's very considerate. And guess what? We share that with others that we're with, and it makes them aware. It's not like you gotta speak loud. Bill needs to hear you, and that doesn't work. That just further aggravates me and makes it more embarrassing.
Yeah, one thing I've found, and I saw it on Chicago Med TV show also, believe it or not, where the doctor who's injured and whatnot, and he's trying to be the tough guy and whatnot, and the nurse tells him about her story when she had cancer and whatnot, and she didn't want anybody to know, or because of all the reasons. And what they both found out was people actually do want to help, and they do want to be told, and they do care and stuff. So we don't have to be ashamed or embarrassed or any other crazy word to say it. And in fact, it makes everything so much better. So that's a great, you create great role models by doing that. Last question. In LA we say, we got to keep them wanting more so we can do a sequel. And that's what happens with movies, right? So we'll have to do a sequel. But last question on this part.
Sure.
In 2021, I had a client told me that the year 2020 was the year that flew by slowly, and I thought, what a great comment that was. And the last few years have been interesting, would be an understatement for most people. With all that, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
It's a time of reflection. It's a time to and continue to be. It's still a blur for me. So one of the things I miss is being in the office and working with folks. Being visual and looking at people and that spontaneous. Hey Joe, you got a second? I want to run an idea by you. I miss that. So it's hard to do that through video conferencing and all that, but we learn to adapt. And that's been fascinating. And it's also fascinating to see how our priorities have changed. And because people are home all the time, I'm very considerate of when the workday ends. Just because they're home and they have access to a computer does not mean you have the right to impose on them or interrupt them.
Yeah.
And so it's all about setting your priorities and having closer relationships to your loved ones. And I find I'm doing more reading. However, I do miss the commute because I miss all the different soundtracks that I would listen to. So, but hey, this is life. You have to be flexible. You have to go with the flow. This is starting to be the new normal. Will we get back to the old normal? I don't know. Time will tell. But here's what I've learned. You have to be flexible. You have to be fluid. Otherwise, you'll be setting yourself up for more frustration. And if you're frustrated, you won't be able to live and work in a more satisfying way. But I will say this, because of my hearing, the mouth, and I'm a lip reader. And so it was hard to understand people with math. But we got past it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Mother Nature before, and I think Mother Nature, maybe slapped us in the head and said, "Look, there's still time to get your act together. Better take advantage of it." So, thanks for being a leader who cares. Thanks for sharing all that, and we look forward to more.
Thank you, Mark, and I look forward to it as well. So be well. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.